You are listening to Lovely Talks Heavy. Hello everybody, and welcome to Lovely Talks Heavy. I am your host, Lovely, and I discuss everything I enjoy with regard to heavy music. For a long time now, I've been simmering on this idea that I wanted to discuss on this podcast, but it is admittedly a difficult one to articulate. I've attempted to do this in YouTube videos with little luck and ability to intelligently articulate myself, but some nights ago on Twitter, I touched on this idea, and while it may take a few episodes worth of discussion to really bring this whole idea together, I think I'm able to better articulate what I want to say with this particular topic. And I'm going to start with this. I'm willing to bet that a good handful of, if not the majority, of metalheads who claim to hate pop music are actually really big fans of pop music. They just don't realize it, or they don't want to admit it. Instead of heavy synth dance beats and lyrics discussing love, sex, and having a good time in the club, these metalheads like pop music with guitars, blast beats, and lyrics surrounding death and being hardcore. Both the heavy music and the pop music that I like share more in common than one might consider or want to consider. Compare and contrast Powerwolf and Britney Spears. Powerwolf maintain an aesthetic and portray an image for their performance of a pseudo-catho-satanic group of werewolves. Britney Spears changes personas for different songs, for performance, and music videos. We know that Powerwolf aren't Catholic priests when we watch the music video for We Drink Your Blood, but it's fun to watch. The same thing applies with Britney when we watch the video for Toxic as she plays the role of a flight attendant. The two also have very melodic musical styles with beats and hooks that draw us in and are easy to enjoy. You want to sing along with "Stand up for the night and call the fight, let your mind collide before the night, here we come, the army of the night." The same way you would with "My loneliness is killing me, and I must confess, I still believe. They're catchy. Now, if you're a metalhead, you probably already know who Anthony Vincent of 10 Second Songs is. We can observe him apply the sort of connection in the songs that he covers. The same kind of song can be applied to very many different musical styles. Now, I bring up Anthony Vincent also because he's one of many different metal musicians and groups taking a pop song and, quote, metalizing it. The lyrics about love or partying in the club or whatever will stay generally, but the synthy dance beats get traded for heavy guitars and blast beat drums. And of course with Anthony this will happen in 10-second intervals, but metal isn't the only genre he works with. But we can still observe this with other musicians, Eric Calderone, Jared Dines, and of course when bands like Children of Bodom, Explore Yesterday, and Ailstorm cover a pop song. More often than not do their adaptations of songs like Oops, I Did It Again remain loyal to the original in the song's rhythm, structure, and lyrics. And yet it's funny to me when I perform the forbidden art of looking at YouTube comments, I see comments like, "Wow, this is better than the original," or "This song is now bearable now that you covered it." Now, my question to these people would be, if I chose to engage with them, which, for the sake of my own physical, spiritual, and mental health, I don't. But my question to these people would be, what made the original unbearable or shitty to begin with? It would be one thing if the person could outright say that they're not a fan of the original vocal style or something like that, and prefer when vocals are grittier and shoutier. That's just more their style. They like that. but I think I could accurately predict that if I were to engage with some of these YouTube commenters, the response would amount to something to the tune of, pop is such a shallow music, I'm using air quotes here, genre. They don't talk about real stuff in their lyrics, and most of the time they don't even write their own lyrics anyways. Now there's so much to unpack to this predicted response. 1. Pop music is shallow. More shallow than when End Ever After sang a lot about sex. When there's a song by Korn called Adidas, which stands for All Day I Dream About Sex. When the 69 Eyes have a song called Dead Girls Are Easy. When Cradle of Filth have a song called Amphetamine Overdose, which I wonder it talks about being addicted to sex. When Ailstorms sing a lot about drinking and being drunk. When Corpy Clannies sing a lot about drinking and being drunk. Are you sure pop is only shallow? And are you sure that it's only pop that's the shallow music genre? Now, it's not to say that I think any less of the examples I just provided with regard to metal, because I do like all the examples I just provided. I think whenever someone makes the sweeping generalization that pop music is shallow, they're just mad that people can have fun somehow without blast beat drums and guitar solos. And they're probably misogynists. More than probably. Now, hard rock and heavy metal are equally as shallow as pop music. Why don't we embrace the vapidity for once and have some fun? Point 2. Counter-argument to the assumption that pop musicians never talk about, quote, real stuff, unquote, in their lyrics. Because, you can easily believe when Amon Amarth sing about Thor fighting Jormungandr when Ragnarok starts, right? Because you can easily believe when Bullet for My Valentine sing about a literal demon inside being awakened. Because you can easily believe that the guys in Avenged Sevenfold have taken human life when they sing about the pleasure of killing in the song called Scream. Because the concept of an antelope hunting man in a song called Honking Antelope by Serj Tankian is very, very real and believable, huh? I mean, meanwhile, Beyonce made an entire concept album about the despair, anger, heartbreak, sadness, and eventual forgiveness that she experienced when Jay-Z cheated on her. Ludacris has a song called Runaway Love where he tells stories of children being abused, dealing with drug addiction, and enduring the struggles of teenage pregnancy. Lady Gaga's entire The Fae Monster album conceptualizes her many different fears in many different ways. Now, these are just a few offhand examples I can provide, and I'm sure there's many more examples of pop musicians discussing real stuff outside of the pop music that I like. Now, at the end of the day, there's different kinds of stories and different kinds of ideas being explored all throughout music, and I think we should focus less on what is real and what isn't real, and more about the stories being told and what is to be gleaned from these stories being told. Number 3. The idea that most pop musicians don't write their own music. Now, if you ever have the chance to take the History of Rock and Roll course on Coursera, it's an online platform, I highly recommend that you do. But the one topic from that course that I want to bring up in this episode is this. In the 20th century, before bands like the Beatles came around, the core focus of the music industry were songs as entities. Many different performers would perform the same song because the idea was to sell the sheet music so that people could bring the music into their homes and play these songs on their home pianos and such. Now, the idea of performers writing their own music wasn't popularized until the 1960s when bands like the Beatles came around. Of course, now music consumption has evolved. Instead of playing music on our home instruments, we're listening to it on our iPods, and the core focus of music is on the performer because they portray a certain image that will attract a certain type of audience. If we're going to harp on the virtue of creating your own music, then Frank Sinatra is a goddamn heathen. And for that matter, anytime any band covers any song, they're heathens and should be condemned. Fuck Ozzy Osbourne and his entire cover album, right? Fuck Metallica and their oh-so-classic rendition of Whiskey in the Jar, huh? Antisocial by Anthrax is immediately garbage because they didn't originally make that song. Of course, yes, rarely when you encounter a pop song did only one set of hands touch it. But it's the same with heavy music. A lot of bands have only one or two members focus on lyrics while the rest compose their portions of the instrumentation. Sometimes the full song composition is left to one or two members and the rest of the band just shows up to record and perform. By the virtue of musicians writing and making their own music being the supposed best ones, does that mean that Ozzy's vocal work on the first Black Sabbath album should be disregarded because Geezer Butler wrote most of the lyrics? Or whenever Nine Inch Nails performs live, everyone except for Trent Reznor should be disregarded as real performers because Trent Reznor is the one who composes, writes, and makes all of the Nine Inch Nails music. The answer is no, of course not, and no, Metallica's cover of Thin Lizzy's cover of Whiskey in the Jar isn't garbage by virtue of them not originally making it, etc., etc., etc. I think the main difference between pop and heavy music in this regard is that when it comes to heavy music, there's a lot more openness about collaboration, about different members bringing different ideas to the table creatively, or how maybe the creative aspect is left to one or two members, then the rest come to perform and record, and that's fine with everybody. While it's not exactly hidden who collaborates in pop music with liner notes and credits and all that fun stuff, significantly less attention is paid to who put in creative input outside of the performer. You see this with certain Grammy categories not being televised, and with a lot more focus being lavished on the image that a pop performer portrays to attract a certain or wider audience. And I think the frustration of heavy music fans with this lack of interest in collaboration in the studio with pop music lies in the fact that many fans of heavy music are also creators themselves. They like to understand where certain ideas came from and how certain sounds came to be, and I do think it's wonderful to want to understand where those certain ideas came from, but we should also understand that just because Beyoncé isn't the only person working on her music, she isn't less talented or less deserving of an Album of the Year award because Beyoncé is a hard worker. Extremely talented at singing whilst performing a choreographed dance, and while wearing perhaps some very uncomfortable stage outfits. And the only metal band I can think of doing that is Baby Metal. And finally, I think a lot of the hatred of pop music does tie into misogyny and racism. When we see Children of Bodom's cover of Oops, I Did It Again with the comments saying that they made the song better, what these commenters are really saying is that this band made this song more palatable to their aesthetic, which includes a hatred of women. Finally, the song is bearable to listen to, translates to, I've always liked the song in reality, but I have some serious issues that I choose to ignore, or possibly, I just fucking hate women. When metalheads put down pop music as inferior because it is a genre more saturated with more recognizable women and non-white people, more than likely there's some unassessed internal issues that need to be addressed. For quite a long time in my own infancy as a metalhead, I would without thought put down pop and rap music collectively because I was so focused on finding more heavy music that I liked. I also had my own unaddressed internalized racism that I didn't start looking at until I was an adult, but when I was still that teenager eager for heavy music, it was easy to put down and dismiss so many rap artists because of that internalized racism that I let fester. It was not a healthy attitude to have towards music with which I was unfamiliar, and I want to encourage anybody who does easily brush off pop and rap as inferior to really look at why, really address why you think that is. And if at some point you do decide to open up and explore pop and rap music, I beg you, dear Jesus Christ, don't turn to Eminem, Post Malone, Macklemore, or Logic first in the rap field. I recommend, if you're going to start out exploring rap music, Kendrick Lamar, Cupcake, or Run the Jewels if you're looking more modern, but definitely look into icons of rap and hip-hop like DMX, like Run DMC, Missy Elliott, and Lil Jon. Before I wrap this up, I do want to point out that this whole time I've been sort of using the term pop as a catch-all for any popular music that one might associate with vapidity, so understand that I'm also talking about rap and hip-hop and R&B and that sort of thing. Now, I feel like there was quite a lot that I unpacked in this episode, and there's still more I want to cover in a future episode, but for right now, I'll say that if you enjoyed this episode, please do share it with a friend. Every time this podcast hits a new set of ears, it means the absolute world to me. And share this on social media as well, and let me know your thoughts on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, YouTube, and Mixcloud. I am LovelyMetalhead. And so, until next week, next Saturday, the next episode of Lovely Talks Heavy, you stay brutal, my friend. Bye!